family was invented by God. I understand that not all creation was consulted at the various referenda that we had in recent years. There is wisdom in creation, and sometimes a dose of humility might do man a bit of good. Years ago, I was able to celebrate the sacred mysteries on a holy island, Skellig Michael. It is also a bird sanctuary, and we were told that the puffins have a life of their own, which goes something like this. They mate, and they go away, and they come back at the same time every year to the same precise cranny, and they find again their spouse. They are faithful to the same for over 20 years, and it goes on to the next generation. They were not consulted at the referendum. Fidelity. We who have been born to a stable family unit are blessed, for it gives security in life. Actually, some years ago, I had a friend visiting what remains of our family, my brother therefore, just by chance, and that person was taken aback and said afterwards, "Isn't it great to see a complete family with a lot of love in it?" My brother was cuddling to bits one of the grandchildren, and there was only love there. And indeed, praise God, my brother and sister-in-law are as bonded now as they were when he married her when he was 24 and she 22. Peace. They never have a cross word. And the children and grandchildren grow up in that peaceful atmosphere, and they are spontaneous, and they'll cuddle you all over. Peace, deep down in the nest that the Lord invented. Look carefully at this, and you will see that there is a circle of love. What is the motor of this? It's switched on by warmth and heat and light, and we, on earth, reproduce something of the life of the Trinity from which we came. The circum-incession of love. The Trinity is all love, inside and outside and inside and all over. It's just but love going round and round. And that is what the family is. A little reflection of that. Some years ago, when I was in Italy and I'd been asked to look after Sigiano a little bit, parish on the mountain opposite, as I was blessing all the houses at Easter, one of the good ladies said, "Let's do something together. What would you like to do?" Well, when the weather calms down a bit after the heat of the summer, let's go together to Loreto, and off we went. And this is what we found. Do you know that it's the real thing? The devil had to admit it. Not long ago in time, there was an awful scene in there when two young possessed persons were in there and all hell broke loose. And it happened to be that there was an exorcist present, and also somebody switched on a mobile phone and caught the conversation with hell. Interesting stuff. Was it the real thing? Yes! And on he went. How he'd been trying to persuade people it wasn't, through his own instruments, the intelligent people of this world. And how thick we were, because all we had to do, he explained, was go back to the original and you find it there. Foundations and I think one wall. It's all proven actually, it's exactly the same bricks. But other things also came out. One thing, and I leave it with you on this, which in the old calendar is the Feast of the Holy Family. The devil hasn't permission to enter the house where, wait for it, the rosary is said. Especially, I think, together. Remember that next time you switch on the goggle box and exclude the rosary. The one is his pulpit, the other is against him, and he can't bear it. And he wants at all costs to remove that instrument from the hands of the little people. Moreover, he had to admit that litany of Loretto, classic one that we still have and use, he can't bear. Not only is that every Hail Mary a thump on his head, but these invocations are also awful for him. Remember that. He doesn't like the litany. He also had to confess that he'd always tried to destroy that house, first of all in ancient times, and then more recently he'd used people who were doing his work for him, and therefore the angels had indeed saved it. He explained that every brick in there was full of prayer and grace and was more holy than even St. Peter's. You know what happened there, don't you? He actually admitted, my brother, notice, my brother Gabriel was here. He was there on bended knees in the name of the Blessed Trinity, asking for humanity's consent to the redemption. She had to say, let it be. Now, in the life in that holy house, a lot was going on, but secretly. And the Christian family must strive to reproduce that in its own modality. Whatever's going on, remember the big issue is peace and not the immediate issue which might take it away. There is a proportion in things. And oftentimes, it's when we forget what's more important, we let something smaller ruin the big one. Don't go there. Life is too short. Actually, the Beatles got it right in the 60s. Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. We can work it out. In university days, it was interesting to see how in Christian circles, couples would spontaneously pair up. And one could see that those couples that paired up in Jesus stuck together and are still together today. I remember one time in our theology class, one of the girls just said that so-and-so, one of the Christians involved, had first asked her and was about to go and ask her father for permission. The classic way of doing it. Order and purity until they got there. And those marriages were based precisely on shared building blocks. You can't build a life on straw. If Jesus is not in the midst, you have not enough to go on. It's not enough good looks and thrills. They pass. You marry a soul. And the soul is still there at 70 and 80 and 90. And there's nothing better than seeing a couple at the age of 80 still holding hands as they walk. True love, it's deeper as the years go on. It's there and all the memories are shared. And you can't start at zero just like that. Going from one crescendo to another, one affair to another, each hitting maximum and getting disappointed. Shared memories. I remember one day at table, at tea, my mother and father were eating away and I was admiring the performance, and Dad looked at a prehistoric-looking biscuit on the table and said in Welsh, "Does that resemble the Rock of Ages?" And my mother said, that was a jump in time of about 60 years when they were courting. They were corresponding, and she was living somewhere with Auntie Lynette, and they were teaching in a school, and I think Dan must have been in the army. And the letter which had gone from my mother to my father had a description of the recent tea there in Bethesda, where the lady that they were lodging with presented for a long time at tea this same portion of biscuits. And there was one ancient one never touched, and Auntie Lynette called it in Welsh Craig yr Oesoedd, the Rock of Ages. And it still appeared 60 years later in the conversation. Table talk. It makes a difference, you know. Those moments of sharing a meal are sacred. And there should never be a television on or any kind of false instrument in between spouses and eventual children. It's sacred and almost sacramental. And it should be blessed. There should be prayer going on at table, as in the Holy Family, when St. Joseph, as the head of the family, would have had ritual prayers. Remember how things would happen on day-to-day levels at home, that simple things made little joys. I remember how it was often very clever because it was a bit sort of intellectual, quotations from Shakespeare misused, even actually sacred scripture. I remember my father eating an orange one time and finding it as hard as leather, so he chewed away and eventually the whole orange came out on the plate. And my mum said, "Idris!" And he replied in the best Welsh possible, "Prove all things, hold fast that which is good," and got on with it. But then, every family has its mode. In our place, it was based essentially on the fun of the mind. Remember, actually, in my room, I'd be studying away, and then sometimes I'd hear suddenly it all bursting out from next door. Oh, he's got another brainwave. It was Big Brother just about to compose something that was coming to him. So I hear for the first time a new song. I tried to carry on with my classics nevertheless, but a few days later it would be out in the public. Ooh. But also there were little joys made of nothing at all. I remember my father was keen on reading, and he would read the newspaper from cover to cover, and he needed peace and quiet to do so. So sometimes he would take the most recent newspaper, especially if it was a big long one like the Sunday Observer, and go into a quiet place in the geography of the house where no one was disturbed, provoking my mother's commentary, "He's gone and usurped the throne." And he would re-emerge an eternity and a half later. My mother would quote Shakespeare at him. Macbeth, Act 2, Scene 2, "The deed is done." And on the family life would go. Another time, we were on the top of some mountain in Wales trying to get warm with some tea, so they were heating this very slow-burning little heater to make some tea, and they were looking at this with great attention. I had my camera present from Dad. I was looking at this performance. Two human beings looking at this centre of the world, both bent double. So I looked at my father from the other side, and Mum said, "Yes, it looks better from that end." And so I'm zoomed in to the rear end of my father, and it's still with us to this day. Moments of time in the Jones family. Little nothings. But that's what life is made of, my friends. Little nothings. Make joy out of little nothings. It costs nothing. A little bit of wit is better than a bad temper. One heals, the other causes pain. I conclude, my friends, we're only here once. This is a new year. We have no idea what it will contain. Years ago in France, I was examining the intentions of prayer written in a prayer book, a book for the public in France, in our monastery. And I noticed things like this, in French of course. For the heart of Daniel, whom I love. She wanted to marry this person. And right beneath it was this other one, that my husband, to some person much later in life obviously, that my husband may find again his smile. Another one, it may cease to be a hell in our place. Interesting, 3 levels of happiness and unhappiness in the family. Which do we want, my friends? This year is coming to us. It's full of dreams for the young people. It's full of memories for the older. But one thing we have in common, we travel on the same moment. And we must all be ready to go, as though this were our last. The only safe way to live, my friends, is to live as though this were our last day, ready to go with our insurance policy fully paid up.
Nostre salute,